Hello, welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mail. We got Sports 25 to life. Talking about tonight's slate of action, and nice big slate as it always is on a Tuesday, and some interesting options. Obviously, no Clayton Kershaw in the win tonight. No Michael Pineda to get you negative points against the Phillies. But so last night, a rough night for cash game pitchers to say the least. But tonight, some guys I really like, and some guys I'm sure that you like as well. So I'm going to start things off with a couple guys here at the top. Madison Bumgarner's in a 6.5 total in San Francisco against a San Diego team that's been one of the worst offenses in the league over the past month. Striking out a ton, they're not scoring any runs. This is obviously a pitcher's ballpark and lowest total in the night for good reason. So I think that Madison Bumgarner, I'm not saying he has to be your favorite option, but he's got to be one of the guys you consider at the top. Minus 200 favorite. A lot of things going for Mr. Bumgarner tonight.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite cash game play tonight. Like you said, minus 200 favorite, 6.5 total. Not a lot of price difference on any site between him, Greinke, and Price, who are the other two top options in my opinion. I'm going to be using him a ton in cash games, probably almost exclusively like 100% on DraftKings. I would think he's going to be really close to that for me, although that's what I did with, like you mentioned, Pineda last night. But
I think we all fell victim to the Pineda trap last night.
Yeah, he wasn't that hard to overcome because almost everyone had him. But that was just a rough night. Nothing you can do about it there. Bumgarner is a much more consistent pitcher than Pineda. For as good as Pineda's been, he's never been a consistent pitcher. So those things are going to happen from time to time with guys like that where Bumgarner's, quite a bit more consistent for me. He's been incredible at home throughout his career. It's a great pitcher's park. Like you said, big favorite here. And, San Diego's offense just isn't very good. There's not a lot to not like here again. I'm going to have a hard time not putting him in every single lineup, honestly. I do like the next guy we can move to here, Zach Greinke, quite a bit. He's only minus 120 right now. I think that's a little low, if anything, honestly, against a Cubs team that swings at a lot of bad pitches, and Greinke has, if not the best control in the major leagues, really, really close to it. And he's going to be putting the ball where he wants it. The Cubs have been really struggling against right-handed pitchers, especially strikeout-wise, so I like Greinke quite a bit as that second cash game option. I think he's got some decent upside, too, with the strikeouts, so he's another guy that I'll be working into a lot of lineups tonight.
Yeah, and the complete opposite of yesterday's wind. Wind blowing in at Wrigley today.
Yep.
So not that Greinke gives up many fly balls anyway, but much, much less of a concern tonight than it was last night. So certainly on board with you there. Another guy who's a sizable favorite and a low total is Chris Archer. I love him in GPPs. I can't play someone against Toronto in cash games. I just don't like doing that. That offense has been too good against righties and lefties. But, I think he's an awesome GPP target at $9,800 tonight because he did struggle in his last game. Wasn't too great in the game before that either. But, we saw his upside in that toward stretch he had there a couple weeks ago. So, certainly the upside there, but not a cash game guy for me.
No, I don't think so either. Definitely some nice upside. I like both him and David Price as upside guys today. We saw what Price did to Cleveland last time. Cleveland really struggles against left-handed batters, strikes out a little bit more than they usually do, which isn't a ton. But they put the ball in play a lot. They don't see a ton of pitches throughout the bottom of the order and stuff like that. So you could easily see Price going another 8-9 innings again in this one, even if he's not having a great game, like runs and hits-wise. So I think he's a nice upside play. He's basically the same play he was last time he played Cleveland, where he's not really the best cash game play on the board. He's a passable cash game play if you want to use him. Small favorite, but I think he's really a volume guy as far as innings go for some upside, that he has some even more upside with some strikeouts there. And I'm going to be using him a decent amount in GPPs to go away from Bumgarner and Greinke because I think he's going to be really low owned since he's right at that same price point. He's actually more expensive than both of them on DraftKings. So I think he's probably going to be a sub 10% owned guy tonight.
Yeah, and that's a really good point with him about the Indians not being a very patient team. Like you mentioned, what he did to him last time, 93 pitches in a complete game. So, that was almost too easy for him. So I'll throw out a couple more guys I'm looking at tonight, and then you can tell me if you got anyone else. I like Jeff Samardzija had his best start of the season against these same Twins, who we know crush left-handed pitching. They are better at home, but they're not a great offense against righties. Went 8 innings, 9 Ks against them last time, about a month back. So I'm looking at him a little bit. And then another guy that some people will be on, I like him because Miami's so terrible against righties right now. Carlos Martinez. He's been pretty damn consistent this year. He had 2 bad starts. Outside of that, it's 15 or more, I believe, fantasy points in every other start. He's given up more than 2 earned runs just twice in his last 10 games. 0 in I think 4 of them. I mean, he's been phenomenal. He's only $8,300. I think he's a great option as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to be another guy that I play a lot in GPPs. It's probably going to be Price, Archer, and him as my 3 main GPP options today. I just don't love Bumgarner as a GPP option because I think his ownership percentage is going to be too high. So I'm going to go with those 3 guys. I don't mind Greinke as a GPP option, but I think he'll be pretty heavily owned, and he's just not a massive upside guy to me. He's not going to go out there and strike out 15 guys.
Yeah.
So I like Martinez, Price, and even Archer a little bit as that kind of play. Martinez will probably be a little bit higher owned because there's really no one else in his price range that is even really a passable play to me. I mean, unless you're going to look up 700 to Strasburg against Atlanta, who doesn't strike out a lot, but it just feels like Martinez is a significantly better GPP play to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I will be playing a little bit of Strasburg because I believe Freddie Freeman should still be out for this one as well.
Yeah, I think they just put him on the DL right before we started this.
Oh, okay. Well, exactly. Well, then he will definitely be out. So, I mean, that offense without Freddie Freeman is certainly not very intimidating, but neither is Steven Strasburg right now. So something's got to give there, but I think he's a good single bullet type of guy tonight.
Yeah, I think so too. Then probably my one, I don't know if I'll call
special of the day.
Yeah, I guess I'll call it that. I don't know what I'm really going to use him in. I'll go all the way down to the cheap guy here. I'm looking at Mike Pelfrey today. As much as I'm not a big fan of Mike Pelfrey, I mean, the White Sox just keep doing nothing every day.
Yeah.
And Pelfrey's been better than you would think, I would say, is probably the best way to put it. He hasn't been good. Like, you're not going to look through his starts and be, like, really impressed. But he's gone 8 innings in 2 of the last 3, 7+ in 4 of the last 5. The guy's been eating up innings for the Twins, saving their bullpen. They're going to keep letting him do that. They don't have a ton invested in him or anything, so they're going to let him pitch deeper into games than you see some of these like more prized arms go. Not a big strikeout guy, so there's not a huge amount of upside here, but at, what is he, 4,800, I want to say?
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, against a White Sox team that just hasn't been hitting at all, I think he's passable as a cash game play. He has a little bit of upside on that price as a GPP play. I mean, we've seen him strike out 7 guys 3 times this year. I mean, that's not a massive number, but it's certainly a solid number for a guy below 5K and who's priced below 27 batters, I think, today.
Yeah.
Something like that. So maybe it's a little less than that. I was thinking 4,300 there for a second, but 4,800, still priced lower than a decent amount of batters. He's going to be a GPP play for me, maybe even a cash game play if I'm looking to get like Paul Goldschmidt and a bunch of Diamondbacks in my lineup, something like that. And then my other interesting play today is I like going back to the Yankees and going CC Sabathia. I mean, if there's one team worse than the Phillies against right-handed pitching, it's the Phillies against left-handed pitching. So I'm fine going back to that well. I don't think the Phillies all of a sudden are just going to be a good hitting team because they put together 2 good games in a row against Waka and Pineda. And Sabathia's been better than you think this year. Like, he's had a couple games where he's blown up, but he's been pretty solid in terms of keeping the ball on the ground. His strikeout rate's been hovering around like the mid-20s. So I feel pretty good about him. Big -245 favorite. I think he's a fine cash game play. He's going to be a little bit heavily owned, I would think, for me to be really excited about him as a GPP play. The over-under is kind of high at 9.5, but you got to think a lot of that is the Yankees going against one of my favorite guys to hit against tonight. So, I mean, Sean O'Sullivan's a guy that we've been just stacking batters against every time he pitches. So you got to think that a lot of those runs are going to be scored by the Yankees. I'm sure we'll get to some of their bats in a little bit here, but Sabathia is a pretty solid option to me.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Like you said, monster favorite there. So we'll start off with the Yankee bat here at catcher, Brian McCann. He was a great play last night, delivered. He's a great play again tonight. Directly below him, I like Steven Vogt a lot against Chichi Gonzalez. Oakland's got a nice high team total today. Actually, right behind the Yankees, 4.5 tonight. So I'm a big fan of a lot of the Oakland bats. And Those two guys probably more reserved for GPPs if you're paying up for a couple pitchers, but I mean, I think either guy's a fine option in any format.
Yeah, I think so too.
Also, of course, catcher, you're going to be looking for some cheap exposure to cores. You can get Nick Hundley if he's in there, Michael McHenry, maybe Wellington Castillo against Kyle Kendrick. Take your pick there. If I'm going cheap, it's going to be with one of these guys in Coors Field.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to argue for anyone else cheap, really. I mean, if you're not going with one of those guys, I think you got to pay up with someone like Lucroy, McCann against O'Sullivan, maybe even Vogt against Chichi Gonzalez that I expect to just get rocked today because he's not nearly as good as his numbers look.
No, those numbers are going to be much different come tomorrow morning. So I'm excited for some Oakland stacks. But yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, those are the only options really at catcher. Don't overthink this one. Really not a lot of other guys in good spots. First base, of course, you want Paul Goldschmidt, but he's $6,000. He gets Kyle Kendrick in a great spot. If you can afford him, certainly get him in there. Some other options. Nice tournament option, Anthony Rizzo against Greinke. Obviously, I'm not trying to pick on Greinke, but Rizzo, as we know, can hit anyone, so he's certainly in play for your GPPs. Albert Pujols, kind of hard to ignore what he continues to do right now.
Yeah.
Up to 23 home runs, 2 more last night, another 4 in his last 5 games. 4 in his last 4 games. So 4,400 for him. He's going to be a pretty popular play because he just continues to homer, and his price continues to stay about the same.
Yeah, remember when he was done early in the season and he was just a complete waste of a $20 million salary, and now he's leading the league in home runs?
Yeah, I mean
that changed fast.
What a fast turnaround that was.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of decent first base options today. I mean, Ben Paulson, always a solid option. I prefer him in the outfield today on DraftKings since he has the dual eligibility against Anderson for Arizona, but he's an option there if you need someone a little bit cheaper. Another guy right in that price range at $3,600 is Lucas Duda against Fires from Milwaukee. I think he's a really solid cash game play. If I'm looking at GPPs, I'm probably going to try and get Goldschmidt in as much as I can. I mean, there's just nobody anywhere near his upside. I have him projected for a full 2 more points than anyone else at first base today, which is not usually common at first base where there's a lot of guys at the top. So I'm going to be trying to get him in my lineup as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I'm looking at some more Oakland bats. I'm going to go a little bit cheaper at first. I like Ike Davis, a couple games off the DL. Like we said, Chichi Gonzalez expected to give up a bunch of runs today. And then one more guy, also with outfield eligibility. I'll probably play him there instead. But Logan Morrison, been leading off. We know Jeremy Guthrie, one of, if not the worst pitcher in the league against left-handed batters. Second base options now. Ben Zobrist is at the top. Once again, Oakland bat, like him quite a bit tonight. D. Gordon gets Carlos Martinez. You don't love the matchup with the price there, so not a guy that you're dying to get into your lineups. Jose Altuve, though, $3,900, and he gets lefty. C.J. Wilson has pitched well over his last couple starts, but Altuve at that price against lefty, I mean, it's going to be hard for me to pass on him in most spots, honestly. I mean, he's a cash game and GPP play for me at that price.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm going today if I can. He looked fine last night. I think he had a double and RBI last night in his first game back. I'm going to be putting him in my lineup a ton. There's just not anyone else that comes anywhere close to him for me, honestly. At that price, I mean, if he wasn't just coming off the DL, and he had been struggling a little bit before he went on, but, I mean, we saw this guy priced at like $5,400 consistently almost every day before he came off the DL, especially against lefties, so... he's basically a steal. I love Ben Zobrist today, despite the $4,700 price tag. I think I'm going to use him quite a bit in GPPs if I can afford him. My cash game play is probably Anthony Rendon at second base on DraftKings against a lefty in Wood. Rendon has a 369 WOBA against lefties over the past 3 years. He's started to look quite a bit better lately since he's starting to get comfortable. So I like him quite a bit. If you're not playing Carlos Martinez, I think Derek Dietrich, if he's second in the lineup, which he has been against most righties lately, at 3,300 is a fine play also for the Marlins.
Yeah, that's a good call. And I'll throw out one more guy. I like him against righties. Texas has been facing a lot of lefties, but Rougned Odor, $3,600, hits righties really well. Hasn't had a lot of playing time, like I said, he doesn't play against lefties, but I think he's a nice option as well. Third base, Manny Machado is just unbelievable right now. The guy's got multi-hits on, I believe, 7 of his last 10 games, with 3 hits in 4 of those games. So, I mean, he's absolutely on fire, but $5,500 is an insane price tag for him. Same goes for Todd Frazier. He crushes lefties. It's not a great scenario in Pittsburgh in that pitcher's park, but he did get a weak lefty and Jeff Locke. Both those guys, I think, really good tournament options. If you're going cheaper, Yasmani Tomas, of course, batting Coors against Kyle Kendrick. I mean, I'd play myself against Kyle Kendrick in Coors, so I think he's certainly in play. And then Chris Bryant got 2 homers last night, one of them off Kershaw, so I'm not certainly wouldn't be playing him in a cash game, but you got to consider him in tournaments tonight.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty strong play also. As far as other third basemen go, I'm not loving what we have at third base today. That's probably my least favorite position. I've looked at Joey Gallo a little bit. I think Jake Lamb's going to be popular, but he's not a guy that I love paying $4,100 for. He doesn't have a ton of power.
Yep.
He doesn't steal any bases. He's got really light runs scored and RBI numbers. I know it's Coors, but I mean, it's tough with a lot of these Arizona guys because they've been like splitting so much time, and I just don't feel great about any of them outside of like Goldschmidt. I'm sure we'll get to Pollock, and even Peralta are probably the 3 that I like. Outside of that, I'm not like just auto stacking Coors in this game really.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Which is weird because I love playing guys against Kyle Kendrick. I just don't feel great about like. It'll depend on where these guys are hitting when the lineup comes out too. But like if Jake Lamb's hitting 6th in the lineup, I don't really want to spend $4,100 on that. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if they go out and score 12 runs at Coors, I'm going to look like an idiot. But it's just not what I want to do in their first game at Coors today. I'd like to see kind of what their lineup is, what they do in the first game. And, I mean, I'll look around a little bit more. I don't mind Joey Gallo for $3,600, like I was saying, against Chavez, who gives up some pretty decent home run numbers. I mean, there's plenty of cash game plays out here, like Matt Carpenter against Urena for Miami is a fine third base cash game play. I mean, there's not a lot I love at third base, but I don't know. I'm probably going to try and spend up if I can. I like Todd Frazier a decent amount, although I don't love him playing in Pittsburgh. But this is probably the toughest position for me today.
Yeah, I will throw out 2 more guys. Chase Headley, $3,900, been batting second,
yep.
And then Aramis Ramirez is $3,400. He gets a lefty tonight, so he's always in play against a lefty. Not having a great season, but
yeah, that's a great GPP play though at that price.
Yeah, absolutely. He's nice and cheap, so you got to like that. Shortstop, another position that I mean, there's options, but nobody really in love with. I mean, Jose Reyes is usually a nice go-to if you spend, but he's got Chris Archer tonight. I'm a big fan of Chris Archer. I don't play anyone against him personally outside of GPP. Troy Tulowitzki, of course, but he's righty-righty. I mean, he's in Coors Field, so of course he's in play at $4,800. When you go down just a little bit further, there's a couple more options that you consider, but I mean, really nobody that you love. Because I mean, Alexi Ramirez batted 6th yesterday. He gets Pelfrey's $3,400. He's hitting the ball decent recently. He's getting on base at least. But I mean, there's really no one I'm in love with here. Is there any diamond in the rough you're seeing here?
Yeah, no one I love. I mean, I'm going to try and pay for Tulowitzki as much as I can. Anderson's not a guy that I'm like overly worried about. The wind's blowing out to left there today. So, I mean, he's like the opposite of like the Jake Lamb and a couple of these other like Chris Owings and stuff like that for the Diamondbacks that don't really have a ton of power. He has the power, and he seems like he's worth the price because there's just not a lot else at the position. He's not outrageously priced at $4,800 either. A couple of the cheaper guys I'm looking at are Segura against a lefty, I think is a fine play. He hasn't been particularly good lately, but he's also cheaper than he usually is when he's sitting first in the order, which I expect him to be against a lefty. And then Carlos Correa is the other one who I think he's reached a base or has a hit in 12 of 13 at Major League games. So I'm just going to keep riding that until he goes cold because at $3,800 against a lefty, in Wilson, who's not really the same guy anymore, I feel pretty good about him after what we've seen from Correa in the first 2 weeks of his Major League career here.
Yeah, definitely. And as we move to the outfield, a guy who actually got a $600 discount after putting up 31 points last night. He's now has 20 or more in 4 of his last 5 games, and that's Brett Gardner. Now he gets Sean O'Sullivan, an even worse pitcher, price discount. Brett Gardner is likely going to be in every single one of my lineups because, I mean, he's in such a great spot today. We already mentioned the high team total. I love Brett Gardner tonight.
Yep, I love Gardner. We mentioned A.J. Pollock already. I think he's a solid play at $4,900 if you're looking for somebody from that Arizona lineup. Peralta's in that same boat. He's a little bit cheaper. Not quite as good of an option as Pollock, but at $4,300, I don't mind him. Not a ton else I'm really like super excited about in the outfield. I mean, Charlie Blackmon's 5,100. That's another Coors play, really. Ryan Braun's probably my favorite GPP play at 4,400 against a lefty in Nice. That's where I'm going to go as far as GPPs go. Josh Reddick is a fine play, but he's 4,700. There's a lot of expensive outfielders today, so I'm probably either going to pay up a lot for one of those guys or go really cheap with someone like if Tyler Moore's in the lineup. He's only 2,200 against a lefty. He's been crushing lefties. I might go back to the Ryan Rayburn well in GPPs, even though he's facing Price. He's only 2,400 and he's hit well against lefties. I think he's got a pretty decent sample size against Price too. So I think he's an all right play at that price. Kelly Johnson, if he's hitting third again, which I believe he was last game for Atlanta. I know it's against Strasburg, but for 2,700, if you can get a guy in the top 3 or 4 of the lineup, it's hard to argue with on a day where there's just not a lot of guys in that middle range to target.
Yeah, I like that Kelly Johnson call a lot because, like we've said all season, really, Strasburg hasn't looked right. He hasn't looked like the old guy. Maybe he just needs some time off to get his head right. But either way, I mean, we'll see. And then one more guy I'll throw out, Garrett Jones. They say Mark Teixeira may not be back till tomorrow, 2,900. I wasn't going to play him at first base, but I'll play him in the outfield at that price.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good call, too.
All right, with that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com.